And the first one we're going to talk about is the whole hoopla with AI, generative large large language models in writing. And people have been freaking out about it. And I did a video last week about how people need to just chill the hell out because it's here. There's nothing you can do about it. It is not thief theft. There's no point in going on a moral crusade about it. You can argue the legitimacy of whether, if a person uses it to construct a novel, whether that's really being creative or not. Okay, cool. And you can argue if you want to support that or not. Cool, but it's not. But a lot of people have been talking about it's theft. You're plagiarizing. No, that's not how it is. People who do that, it's just emotionalism. People don't understand how large language models work. I don't really understand how the ins and outs how they work. My degree is in mechanical engineering and astronomy, not computer science, and I'm not a coding guy. I took a couple before coding classes back in the day, and I took AP computer science, and then I had to take a coding class my first year in university, and it's like, oh my god, no, no, I can't. I don't want to do this. When a semicolon instead of a colon on one line in like 1,000 lines of code makes the whole thing not work. Say no, no, that's not for me. That is way too much anality. And I'm a guy who worked with naval nuclear power for 20, well, thank God, not 20 years, but 10 years. No, 12 years. 12 years. No, actually 14 years. Jeez, what am I thinking? I'm losing track of all my 15 years with naval nuclear power. So it's hard to find a more anal organization than that. But even that is not as bad as some of the coding things that you can get into from what I saw. Although it was pretty cool. My buddy who was in high school with me and AP computer science with me, we all had to do our projects for it, and I did something lame. I forget what it was, but he put together this. This was in the early 90s, right? So he put together a text-based role-playing game like Zork, but we were in a Jesuit high school. But he basically, you took the New Testament, the Gospel, and made it into the Gospels, and made it into a text-based RPG where you follow around through Judea and Galilee to all the different sites of what's going on, and you do all the miracles, and you do see all the events and do all this stuff, and it worked really well. And it was like, man, this guy's a lot better than I am. And it turns out that yeah, he is a lot better than I am, and I'm pretty sure he went and is. I haven't talked to him in a while, but I'm pretty sure he went and is doing computer stuff. And hold on 1 second. Had a kid poke the head through the door and looked like she needed something, but she ran off. So hopefully, I'm in the house, so I know the house isn't burning down. So I guess we're good. Anyway, one is I'm not a computer guy. I can do computers. I'm not a coding guy, but in my limited understanding of how these things work, it didn't take long to realize that the large language model thing, and then all the authors talking about, oh, it's theft, it's plagiarism, you're stealing people's work. No, that's not how it is. It's just taking that which has been input into it and using it as a reference point to generate something coming out. And the thing that's generated coming out is it can imitate a voice, it can imitate a tone, but I suppose you could tell it to directly copy the thing that was entered into it, but what would be the point? You could just take the thing itself and copy it. And if you did that, that would be plagiarism. If you did that, that would be theft. If you did that, that would be copyright infringement. But merely using it as a reference to generate something new is not. And yeah, because what is copyright? How do you? Oh, hey, let's look here. I found this lady here, nice lady here, Street Lib. She made a little video about the battle for fair use and intellectual property. This was 11 days ago, and it was before the couple of court rulings that we're going to talk about here. But she's going to tell you the same thing I told you last week about copyright.
So when you write a book, you automatically own the copyright. Either you can send it to the copyright office, or you simply, by the act of publishing, you legally own the copyright for that particular collection of words in that particular order, in that particular binding and style. It is your work. It is your intellectual property, and it is your author's creation. So what happens when AI companies use thousands of books like yours to train their algorithms without asking permission or paying a dime for all those words be very carefully arranged?
I don't know what happens when you go to the library and check out a whole bunch of books and put them in your head and then use the books that you've read as your basis for understanding fiction and then writing your own book down the line, having been inspired by the fiction you wrote before. Now, a computer doesn't think. It's not intelligent. It has no soul. It can't do anything on its own except what it's been told. So the parallel isn't 100% 100% on the nose, but it is equivalent. Well, let's see what the rest of this lady has to say here.
That's conflict. That's the conflict exploding across the entire publishing industry right now. People are tearing their hairs out. So here's what's happening. AI companies they need it. Like we need food, they need a massive amounts of text to train their models. So they're feeding these systems millions of books and articles, many of which are copyrighted works. And
all of which are copyrighted works. Like you just said, as soon as you write it, it's copyrighted. It may not be registered, but the copyright still exists. Anyway.
Understand there was a large database of pirated books that turned out to be perhaps the best AI stuff out there, because when they were training on technical manuals and public domain advertising and things that were out of print, they really weren't getting great results. But the books really make the AI shine.
Yeah, it's, there's a whole lot. And you know what's in the public domain? Tolstoy, Dickens, Shakespeare, Homer, a whole lot of really great ideas. I think the notion that just because you, I think the notion that only using public domain books can't really train the AI well is not a good plan, not a good excuse there. But anyway, hey, Silent Draco's here. He says, howdy, I backed the work for Qualified on Kickstarter. Great story and read it faster than I thought. Well, I'm glad to hear that there, brother, and I appreciate your support and glad that you liked it. And yeah, stick around. We'll be doing some more awesome stories in that universe going forward. Yeah, hey, put a review up on Amazon and the other places for me, will you? That'd be awesome. Anyway, continuing on with what she's got to say. So I think this excuse doesn't quite hold water, but yeah, whatever. Let's go on.
When you know it. So many of these works are copyrighted, and these were pirated, and the companies who took them knew they were pirated. Authors argue that this is very straightforward copyright infringement. Their work is being copied without their permission to create a commercial product that could eventually replace them.
Yeah, but it can't. It's going to create a new commercial product, but it can't replace them. Unless the company that's running the AI tries to publish something under their name. That would be 100%. That would be definitely a no-go, right? Nope, can't do it. But you can write something that sounds like them and put it under a different name or whatever. And if there's more to it than just tone, right? There's also story structure and all this sort of thing that you got to get into an understanding of humanity and all this sort of thing. But unless the company was to actually start putting out things under that person's name, having trained their AI based on that person's works, it wouldn't be able to replace them. But even if they did that, there would be major grounds for for suits, and that would get shut down hard real quick.
And AI companies, as I've said in videos before, counter with what's called a fair use defense.
Fair use is real. It is.
They claim that they are transforming these original works into something completely new.
Because they are. The thing that the program puts out is not a it is new. It's not referenced to the previous work, but it's something completely different. You can only copyright something in a form that it's put in.
They are training data for AI systems. They're not in the business of writing novels.
True.
So why are authors worried then?
Because authors are insecure, hyper-emotional, illogical, and frankly very annoying creatures for the most part, who jump to conclusions and do every time I'm around other writers, I really get annoyed, with a few exceptions. But especially online writers, they're the most illogical, irrational people on the planet. But I bet she's got a different answer than I do. Anyway.
Authors definitely have serious concerns, and for good reason.
Because they haven't thought it through. And they think they're special snowflakes. And that the march of technological advancement can't possibly hurt their little niche. Well, I'm sorry, but you're not a special snowflake. These things exist. They're going to continue to exist. We either adapt to the world where they exist, or you don't. If you don't adapt to a new world, what happens? What happens to you?
First, it's basic fairness. Imagine spending years crafting a novel, only to have it used without your knowledge to train an AI that could generate unlimited content in your style, and you receive nothing.
Hey, you know who took novels that were people spent years on and used them to train up a new thing, and then created a new thing, and that the author didn't get anything for that new thing? Oh yeah, that was Brandon Sanderson, right? He read Tolkien. He loved The Wheel of Time. Wheel of Time was one of his inspirations. He read that and Tolkien and all these other things, and he paid for the books. He paid $5 for each book or whatever, but then he went on and wrote his own things that were drawn from the inspiration that he got from those earlier works, and he created his own works, and he made a bunch of money from it. In fact, he did such a good job of it that Robert Jordan's wife and editor saw his work and said he would be the perfect person to carry on Robert Jordan's legacy after he died, to finish up the series, and he did it, and he crushed it, and then he goes on from that. And he got access to all of Robert Jordan's notes and all that other stuff while he was writing it, so he got deep delve into his brain, and he took all that and he continued to doing his own career, and he's doing this Way of Kings and this Stormlight Archive series, and he's crushing, making whole tons of money, and he's going on, and he's doing Kickstarters. He's making $40 million in Kickstarters. He's doing all this other stuff, all this other thing. Does Robert Jordan's wife get any money from the stuff that he created after he was inspired by Robert Jordan? No. You know why? Because it's not Robert Jordan's stuff. It's Brandon Sanderson stuff that Brandon Sanderson created, that he was from inspiration that he drew from Robert Jordan and other places. But it's his creation. It's a different thing, right? Now, an AI is not a person, but it's being guided by a person who gives it the prompts and gives it the script to flow through and gives it the outline to follow. You can't just click a button and say, give me a novel, and it spits out a novel that makes sense and you can go sell it. I mean, you can try to do that, but it's not going to work. I've never played with generative AI for text. I've only done it a little bit, played around with it a little bit for some imagery. But hearing from people who have, it sounds like it's only good for a couple thousand words at a time. And then you still have to guide it strictly to where you want it to go. So you have to have an idea of the story. You have to understand story structure. You have to have characters laid out and what they are and who they are and where they're going and what you want them to do throughout the whole thing. You basically have to create the novel before you ever start using the AI system. It just speeds up the process of putting the words down on the page. And then you have to go back and edit it afterwards anyway, because apparently it likes to use the same phrases over and over, like writers do. I like to use the same phrase over and over again, I found sometimes, but the process is not that dissimilar. And so what? So should Robert Jordan's widow get royalties from the Stormlight Archive books because it was inspired by the Wheel of Time? Of course not. So how is that? How is this fairness? How does this fairness argument that this lady is trying to make here stand up? Anyway.
Second, it threatens our livelihoods.
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. I mean, it could if A, you're no good, and B, you refuse to adapt the times.
If AI could churn out books that mimic established authors or genre, publishers could flood the market with AI-generated content, competing directly with human writers and not having to pay them any royalties.
Yeah, you know, this is just a variation on the this greed that indie writers were talking about 10 years ago. And it's because writers don't do math, right? Writers, if I could snap my fingers like Thanos and make one rule for life, it would be that nobody can be a writer who has an English degree. Nobody can be a writer who doesn't have a useful degree or at least useful experience in the real world, because holy God, writers who are just have English degrees, or even worse, who have Masters of Fine Arts, are the worst when it comes to anything practical. All right, so 10 years ago. So Kindle comes out in 2009. People start figuring it out that they can self-publish. And 2010, 2011, that's when I started getting into it. And it starts blowing up, and people are like, oh, yeah. And at the time, the Kindle library was a few 100,000 books, maybe 1 million. And by 2015 or so, it was up to 2 or 3 million people. And everyone was like, oh my God, the sky is falling. Oh, it's so much harder now than it ever was, because there's so many more books now than there ever were. And, they're continuing on doing that. And it's like, oh my gosh, there's so many more books now than there ever were. The sky is falling. You can't get discovered. Oh my gosh, it's so hard. Oh, the golden age of what it was is over, and you can't succeed now because the sky is falling. There's too many books out there. And this is like, mother trucker, have you ever done math? When the Kindle started, there were 1 million books. So your all things being equal, your possibility of getting discovered was a 1 in 1 million. All things in a vacuum. Let's go with this. 5 years later, in 2015, 2016, when everybody was saying, oh my gosh, the sky is falling, oh gosh, there's 3 million books in Kindle. Your odds of being discovered are 1 in 3 million. There's no practical difference between 1 in 1 million and 1 in 3 million. I'm sorry. On its own, it's never going to happen. Right? I mean, and now there's 10 million books in Kindle or something. I don't even know. I don't care. But it's like, but there's really no difference. Oh my gosh, 10% difference off of a 1 in 1 million chance. It makes no freaking difference from a practical perspective. So let all these companies, if they want to generate a whole bunch of stuff in the voice of Leo Tolstoy and try to claim it's Leo Tolstoy. I don't know if Tolstoy's estate exists anymore. Probably not. But people, or that's a more recent thing. Let's say, let's say, Herbert and McCaffrey are bad examples because their kids are actually doing stuff in the world. But let's say, take somebody, I don't know, let's say, but Robert Heinlein. Say, hey, they say, the publisher says, hey, we're going to publish books trained after the after the voice of Robert Heinlein, and we're going to put it out under his name, and his estate has signed off on it and all that good. And it's like, yay, hey, cool, a whole bunch of new stuff by Robert Heinlein. Yay, yay, yay. That's not going to crush the careers of anybody else, because something new coming out from Robert Heinlein is going to get attention no matter what, but also it's just another 5 books, let's say, in the sea of 20 million. I mean, what? Woo, who cares? You still have the same marketing problem that you always had, right? And it doesn't matter from a practical perspective. But writers are emotional, illogical beings who don't do math, and so they can't figure that out.
And finally, there was no transparency here. Most authors have no idea if their works were included in these training data sets. But
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Okay. Has anyone ever gone to a used bookstore or go to a library? I mean, authors know if their books have been purchased by a library, but no idea who checked it out. And used no visibility at all on used bookstores, right? So, but the author's work is being shuffled around amongst a whole bunch of different eyes and all over the planet all the time, and there's no visibility on it, and it's not an issue. The only difference is now is that writers think that it's different because it's digital, but it's conceptually at the foundational level, it's not.
I'm going to put a link in the video to the author, the Atlantic article that compiled a database of all the authors that they knew were trained on these data sets, and you can look up and see if yours is included.
Oh, for God's sake. Okay, so I hadn't watched this this video. I had only watched the first couple minutes of this video before I got started on it. But there was people have this really, really, really weird notion about piracy. It seems like she's making the same. Oh, look, it's a pirate book site. Oh my gosh. Need I quote Neil Gaiman? I mean, I know he's out of favor now, but
when the web started, I used to get really grumpy with people because they put my poems up, they put my stories up, they put my stuff up on the web, and I had this a belief which was completely erroneous, that if people put your stuff up on the web and you didn't tell them to take it down, you would lose your copyright, which actually is simply not true. And I also got very grumpy because I felt like they were pirating my stuff, that it was bad. And then I started to notice that two things seemed much more significant. One of which was places where I was being pirated, particularly Russia, where people were translating my stuff into Russian and spreading it out into the world. I was selling more and more books. People were discovering me through being pirated. And then they were going out and buying the real books. And when a new book would come out in Russia, it would sell more and more copies. And I thought that was fascinating. And I tried a few experiments. And some of them were quite hard. You know, persuading my publisher, for example, to take one of my books and put it out for free. And we took American Gods, a book that was still selling and selling very well, and for a month they put it up completely free on their website, and you could read it and you could download it, and what happened was sales of my books through independent bookstores, because that was all we were measuring it through, went up the following month 300%.
Right. Neil Gaiman is out of favor now because of his dalliances and chicaneries with all those ladies, and whatever the truth of the matter would happen with him and them. I don't really care for the purposes of this discussion, except to point out that that video was made 14 years ago. It was put out by the Open Rights Group 14 years ago, based on a interview that he did some point before then. So it's been, let's say, 14, 15 years that we've known that piracy, the pirated books database, oh my God, piracy doesn't hurt book sales. It never has, never will, because people who are going to pirate books were never going to buy your books to begin with. Some of the people who get the books for free just don't have the money, and so they're not going to buy it, but they might buy them later because when they have the money, because they liked your thing and want to support you. Because people want to support the authors that they like. But even if they don't, they talk to their friends and word of mouth gets around and people do it. Piracy is not a threat, but God forbid. I mean, somebody's going to say, well, Neil Gaiman's special. Well, Neil Gaiman is special in a whole lot of ways, good and bad. But the concept is that piracy is not a problem. Somebody taking your book and reading it without paying you isn't a problem in terms. An author's biggest problem is obscurity, that nobody knows you exist. That's my biggest problem. That's why I'm here on YouTube and Rumble and all the other places, to try to get the name out, try to let people know that I exist, so that we can sell some books. But oh my God, somebody took your book and you got to see if you're included in the pirate database. Well, who cares? You did. Oh my God, you didn't pay for it. But so what? These people weren't going to pay you anyway. But now at least somebody's reading your stuff. But that's different from the AI discussion. Sorry.
So, what's being done? Authors are not taking this lying down. Organizations like the Authors Guild are fighting back through lawsuits against major AI companies. They are advocating for laws requiring permission and payment. They are pushing for AI-generated content to be clearly labeled. And they're developing new contract clauses to protect authors' rights.
Yeah, well, let's talk about a couple of those lawsuits, shall we? All right, Anthropic wins ruling on AI training in a copyright lawsuit. But must face trial on the pirated books, right? In a test case, this is from the AP. Right? Oh, yeah. June 24th. In a test case for artificial intelligence industry, a federal judge has ruled that AI copy Anthropic did not break the law by training its chatbot Claude on millions of copyrighted books. But the copyright company is still on the hook and must now go to trial over how it acquired the books by downloading them from shadow libraries of pirated copies. Judge William Alsup said in the ruling that the AI system is distilling from thousands of written works to be able to produce its own passage of text qualified as fair use under U.S. copyright law. That's because it is. Because it was quintessentially transformative. Because it is. Like any reader aspiring to be a writer, Anthropic's AI's large language models trained upon works not to race ahead and replicate or supplant them, but to turn a hard corner and create something different, Alsup wrote. And he's right. Right? But while dismissing a key claim by the group of authors who sued the company for copyright infringement last year, Alsup also said Anthropic must go to trial in December over which alleged theft of their works. They had no entitlement to use pirated copies for its central library, he wrote. All right, so two different issues. One is the large language model training itself, and the other is use of the pirated copies. Now, if the lawsuit hadn't happened, nobody, it would have been completely transparent, the piracy thing. Now, the piracy thing is its own thing because it is illegal, right? Technically, to download pirated works. And so now the company has been documented to have done that, so it's not like the judge can just say, oh, well, you're good. I mean, it's got to be addressed, right? But let's read the rest of this. A trio of writers, India Bartz, Graeber, and Wallace Johnson, alleged their lawsuit last summer that Anthropic's practices amounted to large-scale theft. The San Francisco-based company ceased to profit from strict mining the human expression and ingenuity behind each one of these works. Books are known to be important sources of the data, in essence, billions of words carefully strung together that are needed to build large language models. In the race to outdo each other in developing the most advanced AI chatbots and other things, a number of tech companies have turned to online repositories of stolen books that they can get for free. Documents disclosed in San Francisco's federal court showed Anthropic employees integral concerns about the legality of their use of pirate sites. The company later shifted its approach and hired a guy from Google. Google exec from their library. With his help, they began buying books in bulk, tearing off the bindings and scanning each page before feeding the digitized version into its AI model. That Anthropic later bought a copy of a book it earlier stole off the internet will not absolve it of liability for the theft, but it may affect the extent of statutory damages, the judge wrote. So, yeah. So, in this case, Anthropic recognized they were doing something wrong and attempted to correct it. But, like the judge said, it doesn't alleviate them from the wrong that they did. They're probably going to still have to pay some damages there. Which, not unreasonable, right? Now, a couple days later, Cadre versus Meta fair ruling use. On Wednesday, judge in the landmark AI copyright case, Cadre versus Meta, ruled in Meta's favor. U.S. District Court Judge Vince Chabria was reluctant, calling his own ruling in significant tension with reality. 13 authors were in the case. The facts of the case were egregious. Not only did the Meta pirate unlicensed copies of the author's works, but internal Meta messages revealed during discovery showed that the company's own employees expressed legal concerns. Other messages, this is from Mashable, Cicely Moran, and I'm sorry, AP, I should have given as Matt O'Brien on AP from the previous work. Sorry, Matt, meant to credit you earlier. I apologize on that one. So instead of settling the domestic copyright battle over AI training, Jabria's ruling as another layer of complexity, and it goes and talks about the Anthropic case. Judge Jabria says, so the same judge also, we talked about that. Both cases on fair use doctrine. Judge Alsop has a very narrow view. If the generative AI output does not itself infringe a particular work used to train the model, any loss in sales of the training work caused by people using the AI output instead cannot be taken into account as market harm under the fourth factor of fair use, said Bernays, who is a intellectual property law professor. But any loss in sales of the training work caused by people using the AI output instead. But nobody's going to use... This guy doesn't understand what the AI output is, because the work that's used for training is not going to just be spit out by the AI output. It's going to be a different work. And they might try to claim that it's the same author, but it's not. It's a different work. So I don't know how you can make the case that you have loss of marketplace, loss of sales from something that's different. Judge Chabria says that's wrong. Harm caused by diluting the market for training work can and should be taken into account. A serious market dilution harm could even outweigh a third level. Okay. So the Calgy plaintiffs whiffed on their fair use argument. The plaintiffs tried and failed to argue against Meta's fair use defense. Kevin Madigan, Senior VP of Policy for the Copyright Alliance, wrote that the plaintiff's lawyers shockingly failed to present the potential counter-arguments. Of the four fair use factors, the case hinged mostly on factor 1, whether the use is transformative, and factor 4, whether the use harms the existing or future market for the copyrighted work. Jabria, the judge, favored Meta on factor 1 and said it was transformative. And then the deliberation then turned to the fourth factor, market harms, where Jabria had much to say about the plaintiff's counsel's argument. They simply failed to successfully argue that they caused harm. I don't know how you could say they caused harm. Did they put out a work under the author's name? Like they simply brought out future Taylor Swift. They put out a Taylor Swift book to compete with Taylor Swift's future book or future song. I mean, that would be hot market harm, but that's not the same thing That's a speculative harm. Anyway, the judge said, even if 1 million songs are produced by Meta's Llama model in the style of a Taylor Swift song, it's not going to affect the market for Taylor Swift songs. But what about the next Taylor Swift? Chabria asked Meta lawyer, I don't know, Canon Shinmugam. What about the up-and-coming, relatively unknown artist who is writing songs, but by feeding copyrighted works like hers into the model that enables the model to produce 1 billion pop songs? Chabria seems to foreshadow his ruling when he questioned the plaintiff, and blah, 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 blah. On the day of the ruling, his decision, the district court judge said his ruling was less about the fair use defense of using pirated books to train AI models and more about the shortcomings of the plaintiff's argument. The court had no choice but to grant summary judgment to Meta, Chabria said before adding, this is not a class action, so the ruling only affects the rights of these 13 authors, not the countless others whose works Meta used to train its models. And it should now be clear, this ruling does not stand for the proposition that Meta's use of copyright materials to train its language models is lawful. It only stands for the proposition that these plaintiffs made the wrong arguments and failed to develop a record in support of the correct one. Yeah. I don't know what the correct one would be. Regardless, I'm not going to claim razor fist level of I was right about this. I mean, he's on a whole nother level of I was right than I am, like, ever. But I was right. Right? When I said last week, you're not. Go back in my video from last week. What did I say? Both judges basically said the same thing. The second judge was more hesitant about the circumstances altogether. The first judge said, yeah, that's fair use, but you guys shouldn't have pirated. You gotta have to pay for pirating. When you should have used legally obtained copies to do your training, and that's legit. But they both agree that the fair use substance of the question. So I don't know. Seems to me that there's a whole lot less hair pulling and screaming in the writer sphere than I thought there would be over this. At least not that I've found. Maybe, of course, I don't spend much time lurking in writer spheres, so maybe I'm not seeing it. But I think the people who understood the discussion were probably not surprised by it, and those who didn't are going to be offended by something no matter what anyway, and they're so emotionally driven that they... Anyway. Let's go back to my book.